Story 1. People always think it's peaceful out here. No neighbors, no traffic, just trees and quiet. But quiet can turn on you. It can sharpen things. I live alone now, in a one-room cabin my grandfather built 40 years ago, in the backwoods of northern Arkansas. Closest town is 40 minutes away, and that's if the dirt road isn't a swamp. Most days it's just me in the woods. I never told anyone this story. I don't even know what it was, but I know it wasn't natural. And it happened one night, just once. But that's all it took. This was last fall. Mid-October. The days were warm, but the nights were dropping below 40. I had finished splitting firewood and was sitting on the porch with a cheap beer, listening to the frogs and watching the last bit of orange fade out of the sky. I remember it was dead quiet, no wind, no bugs, which was weird. Normally this place hums at night, but that night it was like everything shut up at once. At first I thought maybe a storm was coming. You know how animals get weird before weather changes, but I could feel it in my stomach. It wasn't that. This was something else, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Then I heard it. Not loud, just this slow, heavy rustling out beyond the tree line, back where the woods thicken and the underbrush gets tall. Not like an animal scurrying, it was rhythmic, two-footed. I figured it was a person, but that didn't make sense. Nobody comes out here, and if they do, they sure as hell don't walk through pitch-black woods without a flashlight. I leaned forward and squinted, but I couldn't see much. The moon wasn't up yet. I shouted out, just a simple, "Hey!" More annoyed than scared. The steps stopped. Nothing answered. That's when I saw it. It moved between two trees, fast but smooth, like it glided. I only saw the shape, a little taller than a man, but narrow. Thin legs, arms too long, and the eyes. I swear to God the eyes glowed. Not like they caught a light. There was no light. They glowed on their own, yellow and dull, like old headlights behind fog. I stood up so fast I knocked over my beer. Whatever it was, it stopped just inside the tree line and stared at me. I stared back. I don't know how long we stayed like that. My skin was crawling. I could feel every hair on my arms and neck standing up, like my body knew before my brain did. This thing wasn't supposed to exist. I backed toward the door. I didn't turn my back, just inched back slowly. My hand found the doorknob, and the second I touched it, that thing moved. Fast, like impossible fast. It didn't run. It covered 30 feet in a blink, and suddenly it was at the edge of the clearing, no more than 10 feet from my porch. It was tall, had to be over 7 feet. The limbs looked wrong. Too long, too thin, like they were stretched. And its head was wide, round, almost owl-shaped. That's the only thing that made sense to my brain at the time. An owl. A huge, man-shaped owl. But it didn't have feathers. Its skin looked smooth, dark, like wet bark. And those eyes, they never blinked. It opened its mouth. No sound came out, but it opened its mouth. And I don't know how else to say this. It opened too far, way too far, like its jaw unhinged. And inside it was just black, not empty, not shadowed, black, like looking into something bottomless. I bolted inside, slammed the door, and locked it. I didn't turn on the lights. I just backed into the corner of the room with my shotgun, heart pounding like a jackhammer. I didn't hear it walk, but I felt it approach the cabin, like a pressure, the way air changes before a tornado hits. The boards on the porch creaked once, then nothing. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, not breathing, and then I heard it on the roof. Something heavy landed up there. Not a raccoon, not a branch, something big. It walked slow, 1 step, 2 steps, then it just sat up there. I could hear its breathing through the ceiling, deep, steady, too slow to be human. I was too scared to move. I didn't know what to do. And then it made this sound, this long, low, "Ho!" like an owl's call, but deeper, wrong. I could feel it in my bones. It rattled the windows, I swear to God. Then nothing, not a footstep, not a breath, just silence. I stayed in that corner all night, shotgun shaking in my hands. Didn't move until dawn. When I finally went outside, everything looked normal. No marks, no tracks, no sign anything had been on the roof. I even climbed up there. Nothing. So I don't sit on the porch anymore. And I don't go outside after dark. Story 2. I'm not from the city, never have been. Grew up in interior Alaska, about 40 miles off the road system, where winters bite through double-pane glass and summers smell like spruce pitch and bear scat. We're the kind of people who haul water, trap for fur, and eat what we shoot. My name's Reed, and I work seasonal jobs, mostly guide work or oil camp stuff, whatever pays and gets me back to my cabin before breakup. Last year, I took a stint on a research vessel in the Arctic Ocean. A friend of mine, Dylan, had been begging me to join the crew. Easy money, he said, just keeping an eye on the fuel lines and moving gear. I'd never been that far north before, and I figured, why not? Ice, whales, cold wind. I wasn't expecting to come back with nightmares. This happened in August. We were docked near an uninhabited island above the Brooks Range. Just rock and snow and icy silence. The biologists on board wanted to explore the coastline for polar bear tracks or something. Dylan and I were tasked with hauling their equipment from the Zodiac up to the higher ground. Nothing too crazy. We'd done 2 trips up and down already. The 3rd trip was when it happened. We were maybe 30 feet inland. I was ahead of Dylan, carrying a cooler of gear, boots crunching on gravel. That place was deathly quiet. No birds, no wind, just the low hum of the Zodiac engine out on the water. Then Dylan stopped. "Reed, hold up." I turned. He'd gone pale, just staring down at the rocks in front of him. I set the cooler down and walked over, and I swear to God, I still see it clear as daylight. A human skull, half buried in the shale, still had some yellowing ligaments attached, tufts of black hair tangled behind it. The jawbone hung crooked, like it had been wrenched open. One eye socket was filled with grit, but the other was just staring up, hollow. Neither of us said anything for a minute, just stood there looking down. Then Dylan finally whispered, "What the hell?" We looked around. No signs of clothes, no boots, no gear. Just that skull, and a few feet away, some long bones scattered like something or someone had dragged them around. We didn't touch it. We radioed the boat and told the captain what we'd found. The crew didn't want to delay the survey, so the captain told us to cover the remains and mark the coordinates. Said they'd report it to the authorities later. We dug a shallow pit in the gravel, placed the bones as best we could, and marked the spot with a flagpole. I didn't like it, didn't feel right, but I wasn't about to argue with chain of command. Dylan was visibly shaken. He kept glancing over his shoulder, like someone was watching. We wrapped up the day, got back to the boat, and didn't talk much after dinner. 3 days later, we were back at the same island. The team wanted to check a GPS sensor they'd left behind, so Dylan and I went back ashore. The wind was worse that day, whipping hard enough to sting your ears. I remember it because it made it hard to hear anything else. We hiked up the same slope, and as we crested the rise, I stopped cold. The flagpole was knocked over. The rocks we'd used to bury the bones were scattered, flung like something had torn through them. And the skull? It was back out in the open, but it wasn't lying still anymore. It was upright, balanced perfectly on a flat rock, facing us. Jaw closed now, no hair, cleaned, like something had licked it smooth. Dylan went absolutely silent, not even breathing. I whispered, "This isn't right. That's not right." He nodded once, then turned and started walking fast back to the boat. I followed close. We didn't run, we didn't dare, but we moved like hell. Halfway down, I turned back. Just once. The skull was gone. We never told the others what we saw. Just said the grave had been disturbed, maybe by a fox or bear. No one asked questions. Nobody wanted to delay operations. The Arctic doesn't care about your nerves. We finished the contract and flew back downstate 2 weeks later. Dylan quit the industry, moved to Washington. Works in a hardware store now, says he's done with the cold. Me, I still live off-grid, back in the interior, but I don't sleep well in August anymore. Story 3. You ever stare at something so out of place, it makes your brain stall? I work at a visitor center for a state forest in western North Carolina. Population around here? Maybe 500 if you count dogs. My job's mostly paperwork and checking people in before they hit the trails. You wouldn't think much weird stuff happens out here, but on the quiet days when it's just wind and bugs and nothing else, that's when the forest feels wrong. This happened last September. It was just after Labor Day. The summer rush had died down, and we were back to the usual trickle of campers and hikers. That morning, I was on shift with two others, Rachel, who handled maps and brochures, and Steve, one of the rangers. Around 9:30 a.m., a hiker came in looking pale. She was probably mid-40s, city type, nice boots, shaking like she'd had too much coffee. "I think there's a dead animal out on East Pine Loop," she said. I didn't look long. It just smelled weird. Rachel and I exchanged a look. Dead deer were common, sure. Bears even sometimes. But East Pine Loop was only a mile-long trail. Family-friendly, pretty well trafficked. We figured we'd check it out, just to be sure. Steve radioed another ranger to cover the desk, and the three of us hiked out. It was warm, maybe 80 degrees, but the woods felt cooler, quieter than usual. We found it about halfway down the loop, right off the side of the trail. At first I thought it was a trash bag or maybe a soaked jacket balled up in the brush. But when I stepped closer, my stomach flipped. It was meat, like a lump of raw liver, the size of a soccer ball. Wet, glistening, almost shiny. No fur, no bones, no limbs. Just tissue, a slab of it. The creepiest part, it was half wrapped in a torn white t-shirt, the kind you get in bulk at Walmart. Around it, scattered like someone tossed them, were coins, old ones, quarters, nickels, pennies. A few of them looked green, like they'd been buried and dug back up. No blood, Steve muttered, crouching down. No drag marks. This didn't come from an animal kill. "Organ?" Rachel asked. "It looks like a liver." Steve leaned in, didn't touch it. He sniffed once, then flinched back. "Placenta," he said flatly. "Human, maybe." I stared at him. "You're joking." He stood up and shook his head. "I've seen afterbirth once. This matches. Maybe animal, but this looks human." That froze me. Now here's the part that really messes with my head. To get into this park, you have to check in at the front desk. We keep a log. And that day, only 6 people had entered. 3 solo hikers, 1 couple, and 1 guy with a camera who said he was doing bird photography. So either someone carried a human placenta, wrapped in a t-shirt surrounded by coins, onto the trail, or they gave birth right there. But there was no blood, no footprints, no signs of struggle or mess. Steve called for backup and told us to walk back to the center. I remember turning and taking maybe 10 steps before Rachel grabbed my arm. "Wait," she whispered. I turned back. Steve was standing still, looking down at the thing, and it was moving. It wasn't much, just the edge of the meat puckering, like it had breathed in. A twitch, almost like muscle memory. "Steve," I said. He didn't answer. The skin, or membrane, whatever, rippled. Something pushed against the inside. Not hard, not sharp, just something shifting beneath it. Then it split, not like an explosion, not fast. It peeled, slow and careful, like it had been waiting. What came out wasn't a baby. It wasn't even alive. But I swear to you, I saw something push upward through the membrane and roll out into the dirt. It was a lump of bone, a human molar, a tooth. Yellow and cracked and big, way too big. Steve took a step back. "We're leaving," he said, voice shaking. "Now!" I looked back once more as we walked. The thing was collapsing in on itself, leaking a dark brown liquid that didn't smell like blood. It smelled like copper and rot and damp stone. The tooth just sat there, half sunk in the dirt. We didn't speak until we got back to the ranger station. Steve made a call to his supervisor and told him about the biological hazard. They shut the trail for the day. By evening, the meat was gone. Clean gone. No blood, no tooth, no coins. Just pine needles and a dent in the dirt. Like something had sunk down instead of walking away. They blamed an animal. A bear, maybe. But we all knew better. I checked the logs. No one had signed out. No one reported seeing anything unusual. Sometimes I think about it. about the way it moved, about what was inside it, about the coins. It felt like a ritual, like someone had offered something to the woods, and the woods had taken it. I've lived here all my life. I used to think I understood the land, but now I keep a flashlight in my car, even during the day. I never hike alone, and I don't go near East Pine Loop anymore. Not because I'm scared of what I saw, I'm scared because I think it wasn't meant for us to see. Story 4. I'm not from anywhere in particular. Born in Glasgow, worked Aberdeen, bounced around rigs most of my life. I'm on ad hoc shifts now, North Sea platforms off the Scottish coast, sometimes 2 weeks on, sometimes more. The weather changes out there like a mood swing. The sea doesn't care about you. That's the first thing they drill into your head. You're just a tick on its back. This happened on my first full night shift. I'll never forget it. Not because it was my first, but because I never did another one again. We were stationed on Dunvegan Bravo, fixed leg platform, 40 miles offshore. Not huge, maybe 80 crew, but enough so you don't go a whole shift without seeing someone. Or that's what I thought. I just finished a half-portion curry in the galley, same taste as the last 6 dinners, when I got told by maintenance coordinator to check the flare line monitors. Quick sweep, just log readings, radio in if anything spikes, he said like he was asking me to take the bins out. So I grabbed my helmet, clipped my radio, and walked out onto the upper walkway. It was 10:18 p.m. I remember because I logged the time on the inspection sheet I stuffed in my pocket. It was already dark, thick cloud overhead. That time of year, you barely see stars. But what threw me off first was how quiet it was. You still hear the usual pumps, fans, the low hum of the plant, but it felt dulled, like the sound had distance, as if I was hearing it through cotton. No voices, no clatter, nothing human. That should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Halfway across the upper deck, a thick fog started creeping in. Fast. Not mist, fog. 1 minute you can see to the next platform leg, the next you can barely see your own boots. It swallowed the metal walkways, the flare boom, even the lights. I stood there, waiting for it to thin, when I realized I couldn't see the sea through the grating under my feet. Usually you can. A black shimmer way down, maybe 60 meters. But not then. I could hear it, though. Muffled, distant, like it was trapped far below. I stepped carefully, not trusting what I was walking over. I radioed in, standard update, and no response. I tried again. Nothing. Not even static. I swapped channels, tried engineering, tried crew ops. Nothing. Just a dead channel hum. And that's when I realized I hadn't seen a single other person since stepping out. I kept moving. No point going back through the fog if the flare line was just ahead. I made it to the monitor station, checked the gauges, normal readings. But something else was off. I caught a movement in the fog ahead, just past the junction toward the east catwalk. A shadow, I thought, but not like someone standing still. It had motion, slow, swaying, like something hanging or rocking. I stared, trying to focus, but it kept moving just out of clarity. I stepped forward, called out, "Hello? Who's there?" No reply. I took another step. The walkway creaked beneath me, metal groaning against the cold. I reached the junction, and that's when I smelled it. Burnt metal and rot, like overheated wiring mixed with seawater. It wasn't natural. I'd never smelled anything like it on a rig. I backed away. Then I heard it. A scraping. Not of tools or gear. Something sharp dragging across steel. Deliberate. It came from the fog ahead. Slow, then faster. Then silence. I bolted, turned and ran back toward the main deck. Fog whipped past me like smoke, my boots clanging against the grates. I passed the flare boom, then the compressor vent, and stopped dead. There was someone in the path. A figure, not moving, just standing. I couldn't make out the face. It had a helmet on, but the posture was wrong. Head tilted at an unnatural angle, arms too long. They just stood there. No breathing, no shift of weight. I froze. My legs locked up. "Who the hell are you?" I shouted. Nothing. Then it stepped forward. 1 step, 2. It didn't walk like a person. It jerked forward, like a puppet, stiff and wrong. The lights above flickered, just once, and when they did, it was closer. Right in front of me, I saw its face, or what was under the visor. It wasn't skin. It was smooth and wet, like blanched wax with no eyes. Just empty black sockets. Its mouth hung open, stretched impossibly wide, and inside nothing, just black. No teeth, no tongue. It raised its arm, long and thin like it had too many joints, and pointed at me. I ran. I don't remember my feet touching the floor. I just remember blur, lights, fog, railings. I burst into the accommodation block and slammed the door shut behind me. I turned to look through the small window. Nothing was there, just fog. I didn't report it. I couldn't. What was I going to say? Saw a ghost out by the flare line? I just said radio comms dropped and I lost time in the fog, which was half true. The next morning, the fog lifted by 6 a.m. Sun came out like none of it happened. I walked the same path during the day, no sign of anyone. Cameras, they were offline during the storm cell. Apparently a circuit tripped, no footage. But that walkway by the east catwalk, burn marks on the handrail, and a deep scratch, about chest height, along 10 feet of pipe. They sent someone to repaint it. I never worked night shift again. Not because I asked, because they never scheduled me, and I never asked why. Story 5. I live outside a logging town in Pennsylvania. Our house backs into a huge state forest, and growing up here, the woods were like our backyard. I've hunted in them, hiked them alone, even slept under tarps with no tent in winter. They don't scare me. But what happened out on the Loyalsock Trail my junior year of college? I don't talk about that much. I think it's because there's no way to explain it that doesn't sound fake, or worse, like I imagined it. Anyway, it was a long weekend in the fall. Me and a guy from my dorm, James, decided to do the full Loyalsock loop, just over 50 miles. He hadn't done anything that long before, so I packed extra gear and kept the plan simple. 4 days, 3 nights, no cell reception, and no one to bother us. The weather was perfect. Cool, crisp, dry. We made it about 18 or 20 miles in the first day and looked for a place to crash. I remembered this little offshoot I'd camped near once before, down by where a feeder creek met the main river. Not marked, not easy to find. You kind of had to scramble down a slope, then cross over some rocks to reach this flat little peninsula. There's only one way in or out, and it's boxed in by water and brush on all sides. Good cover. It's the kind of spot where, unless someone knew you were there, you wouldn't be found. That's where we set up for the night. Built a fire, made some food, had a little whiskey. Nothing crazy, just enough to warm us up. Fire went out by midnight, and we both crashed in separate tents. I fell asleep fast, but something woke me up around 3. Not a sound exactly. It was that feeling, like something's wrong. The kind of thing that makes your body wake up before your brain figures out why. Then I heard voices, not talking, whispering. I froze, just lay there in my bag, trying not to breathe too loud. I thought maybe James was up talking on the phone or something stupid, but I knew there was no reception, and anyway, it wasn't just one voice. 2, maybe 3, all low, too low. I unzipped the top of my tent an inch and peeked out. Moonlight was bright enough to make out shapes. James was already awake, sitting upright in his tent, his face lit up faintly by the silver light. He looked over at me, eyes wide, and put his finger to his lips, then pointed. That's when I saw them. 4 figures coming down the slope. No flashlights, no sound of gear or boots, just silent movement. They didn't stumble, didn't talk, didn't check their footing, just glided down toward us like they knew exactly where they were going. Only one of them had a backpack. That's the part I remember clearest. They were 20 miles into a backcountry trail, no lights, no gear, and they looked clean, like really clean. You do not look clean out here, not even after 1 day. They walked straight into our camp, didn't say a word, just sat down around the cold fire pit like it belonged to them. All of them facing the ashes, not looking at us. My heart was going so loud I thought they could hear it. I quietly grabbed my survival knife. Not that it would have helped. James cleared his throat. "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" One of the men looked up, no emotion in his face at all. "You got any food?" I didn't want to piss them off, so I reached into my bag and pulled out one of our backup mountain house meals. I tossed it gently toward him. He didn't say thanks, just caught it and stared at it like it was foreign. I tried to sound casual. "No lights, huh? You guys okay? Trail's kinda rough at night." Another one answered without looking up. "We don't use lights." James asked, "You know where you're going?" The woman replied this time, voice calm and flat. "We know." I followed up. "Why hike at night?" No one answered that one. They just sat there, not moving, not blinking, like they were waiting. Then the first guy said, "You want to light the fire? Sit with us?" James said no. I didn't say anything. We just stared at each other. Eventually, without a word, they stood up. The one with the pack picked it up. None of the others had anything on them, not even water bottles. They walked away the same way they came, silent, in step. We waited until the last shadow disappeared back up the slope before we moved. James whispered, "What the hell was that?" I didn't know what to say. I just shook my head. We took turns staying up the rest of the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined them coming back, just standing there, staring into the tent. When dawn finally broke, it felt like the pressure in the air let up. I crawled out of the tent, half convinced it had all been a weird dream. But right by the fire pit, there was this knit cap, fuzzy, gray, and damp with dew. None of us had worn anything like it. We left camp an hour later. Didn't speak much. We didn't even finish the loop, cut the trip short, and hiked straight out by a fire road 2 days early. I haven't been back to Loyal Sock since. I still have the cap in a box in my closet. Don't know why I kept it. I don't tell many people this story. They just say it was probably hikers passing through, or some trail weirdos, or that we were half asleep and imagining things. But I know what I saw, and I know how it felt. Those people, if they were people, weren't lost. They weren't surprised to see us. They were looking for us, or something like us. Story 6, I live up near Grayson County, Virginia, not far from the Blue Ridge. My house is about 10 miles down a gravel road that doesn't show up on GPS unless you zoom in real close. Nearest neighbor's a mile away, and even they mostly keep to themselves. I like it that way. Peace and quiet, just me and my dog, Scout. I do forestry inspection work, stream surveys, erosion control, that sort of thing. So I'm used to spending long hours deep in the woods. I've walked through plenty of strange things in my time, but nothing ever stuck with me. Not like this one did. It was mid-October, a Thursday. Cold front had moved in, so the air had that bite to it. Not quite winter, but enough to make your breath show. I'd been hired by a landowner to check a creek running through their property. Erosion, runoff impact, all that. Nothing fancy. The parcel was big, almost 300 acres of mostly untouched forest. Old growth, mossy, dark even at midday. The kind of woods that felt quiet in a way that made your ears ring. I parked at the gate and started hiking in around 9. I remember looking up and realizing how little light made it through the trees. It was the kind of place where sound doesn't travel right. You snap a twig and it's sharp in your ear, but you can't hear your own footsteps 5 feet away. I was about 45 minutes in when I reached the creek bed. Everything seemed normal. Water was low, maybe 2 feet across. I started my notes, took a few photos, logged sediment depth. Then I saw it. At first I thought it was a tree fall across the creek, something gray lying half submerged in the water ahead. I walked closer and realized it wasn't wood. It looked like cloth, heavy, wet, folded fabric. My brain went through the checklist. Old tent, trash, a tarp maybe? Then I saw the hand. It was just barely sticking out from beneath the folds. Pale, bloated, and unnaturally smooth. Fingernails had turned bluish, like the blood had pooled. I didn't move for at least a full minute. My first thought was, okay, this is a body. Do I call the sheriff? Do I mark the GPS? But as I stood there trying to piece together what I was looking at, I noticed something that didn't sit right. The creek wasn't deep enough to hide that much of a person. Maybe 6 inches of water max. But the shape beneath the cloth, whatever it was, it dipped far deeper than the bed allowed. The surface looked like it had collapsed inward, like the fabric was being pulled into a pit that shouldn't be there, like the ground itself was wrong. I edged closer. I don't know why. I knew I shouldn't have, but I had to be sure. "Hello?" I called out. Are you hurt?" No answer. I stepped onto a flat stone near the bank, maybe 5 feet from it. I crouched to get a better look, and that's when I saw the edge of the face. It's just a cheek, swollen. The skin wasn't right. It had a waxy look to it, off color, like candle wax left in the sun. The mouth was visible too, open, too wide, no teeth. I swear to God, there were no teeth in that mouth. Just a black hollow, like the inside of it had rotted clean through. I stood up fast, stumbled backward, and nearly lost my footing in the moss. Then I heard it, this low, wet sucking sound, like someone pulling their foot out of mud. It was coming from the water. I turned back just in time to see the cloth shift. It moved, not from the current, not like it was being pushed downstream. It was moving on its own, crawling, no, slithering, up the edge of the bank like it was alive, like it was trying to get out. I ran, full sprint. Didn't care about branches, didn't care about the GPS or my gear, or the fact that I'd left my sample kit down by the water. I just ran. I made it back to the truck soaked in sweat and shaking. I didn't go back for the equipment, never reported it, couldn't. What was I going to say? Hey, there's something dead in a stream, but it's also kind of alive, and the water doesn't make sense? I'd be laughed out of the field. But I haven't been back to that part of the woods, not once. I even turned down a job 6 months later because the parcel shared a border with that same tract of land. I don't know what I saw. All I know is that it wasn't a body. It was something pretending to be one, something that wanted me close. And I think if I'd stepped any nearer, I wouldn't be here telling you this. Story 7. People always assume it's peaceful living out in the sticks. They picture birdsong and big skies. They don't think about what it's like to be truly alone. My name's Sean. I live in a remote patch of Southern Virginia, way off the main road, 10 miles of gravel to the nearest gas station. Most nights it's just me, my dog Finn, and the sound of wind pushing through the trees. Used to be a quiet life until that night in January when everything shifted. Back then, I was supervising for a janitorial company that had the school district contract. Once or twice a week, I handled the gym floors and hallways at Letcher Middle School. I'd go in after hours with one of those big industrial floor scrubbers, the kind that looks like a Zamboni crossed with a go-kart. It'd take me about 90 minutes to do a loop of the whole building. After that, I'd eat dinner in the library or sometimes nap on the beanbags. I had keys and an alarm code, so no one ever bothered me. This particular night started like any other. Drove in around 8 p.m., icy gravel popping under the tires, no one in sight. It was pitch black by the time I started the machine. Headphones in, hoodie up, just rolling up and down the main hall. I must have been on my third pass when something shifted. Not a sound exactly, but a pressure, like the building exhaled and forgot to breathe back in. I remember pausing the machine for a second, pulling one earbud out. Nothing. Just the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I finished around 9:30, locked the machine in the janitor's closet and headed to the library. Ate a ham sandwich, scrolled through my phone, started reading a paperback I found on the shelf. Around 10:15, I packed up and drove home. Next morning, I get a call from district security. It's barely 7 a.m., and I haven't even had coffee yet. "You were at Letcher last night, right?" the guy asks. "Can you come in?" "Something wrong?" I asked, already feeling that ice water stomach drop. Just come in." When I pulled up, there was a county cruiser parked by the main entrance. Inside, the security guy, Marty I think, was waiting with a cop. Both of them looked like they'd been up all night. They asked if I noticed anything strange while I was there. I said no, not really. I had my headphones in most of the time. Marty nodded, then brought me to the monitor room, pulled up the feed from the hall cameras. The timestamp read 8:52 p.m. "There," he said, pointing. And that's when I saw it. On the screen, I was driving the floor machine past the 400 wing, the row of classrooms near the art room. As I passed, a door opened behind me. Something stepped into the hallway. Just stepped out. The hallway was lit, but this person, if that's what it was, looked like it didn't quite belong in the light, like it was being lit wrong or slightly out of focus. It didn't move fast. It just stood there for a while, maybe 30 feet behind me watching. I kept scrubbing, completely oblivious. Then it turned and entered a classroom. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. That was someone in the school while I was there? We thought maybe it was a break-in, Marty said quietly, but nothing was taken. No signs of forced entry. No alarm tripped. The cop spoke up. We can't find footage of them leaving. I blinked. What? They entered that room and didn't come out. We've reviewed every angle, every camera. It's like they disappeared inside. They had done a sweep, every closet, every room, every crawl space. No one, nothing. The door it went through, locked from the inside when they checked it. I asked to see the footage again. I needed to see it closer, clearer, so they rewound it. This time I noticed something worse. When the figure stepped into the hall, it didn't walk. It shifted. Like each frame was missing a few in between, making its motion janky, glitchy. Its limbs looked too long, like the proportions were just off, like it was wearing a person suit that didn't quite fit. And for the few seconds it stood there, it turned its head, directly toward the camera. Not toward me, toward the lens. It knew it was being watched. I didn't say much after that, just answered their questions and left. But that night back at home, things didn't feel right. My dog Finn wouldn't come in the house. He just stood at the tree line, staring at the front door, hackles up. I finally had to carry him inside. I locked every window, drew the curtains, sat in bed with all the lights on, holding the baseball bat I kept under the mattress. Around 2:13 a.m., the smoke alarm chirped once. Not a full alert, just one sharp beep, like it lost power for a second. That's when I saw it, just outside my window, not standing, not moving, just there, a pale outline. Watching, same proportions, same wrongness. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. It never knocked, never made a sound. After a while, it just faded, like it hadn't been there at all. I quit the job a few days later. Haven't been back to the school since. No idea if they ever figured out who or what got in that night. Doesn't matter. Story 8. I'm not usually one to talk about this kind of thing. I work offshore, marine systems engineer. We build and inspect drill ships, and I've been all over the world doing it. China, Singapore, Korea, Norway. The job keeps you moving. Long days, quiet nights, plenty of isolation. That's part of the deal. But something happened on one particular ship, the Lushan Star, that I still can't shake. It started when we were docked in Yantai, China. The ship was nearly complete, brand new deepwater drill vessel. I'd been on it since the early fit-out phase, going over every technical drawing and schematic. I knew that ship inside and out. That's what made the whole thing so messed up. One afternoon we were doing a final walkthrough before sea trials. I had a junior engineer with me, Wei, who was fresh out of school. We were checking through the port-side equipment rooms when Wei frowned and pointed at his tablet. "This doesn't match," he said. "There should be a utility bay between bulkheads G5 and G6. I took the tablet and looked. Sure enough, on the design schematics, there was a 3.5 by 2 meter room tucked between those bulkheads. But standing in the hallway, all we saw was continuous welded wall. No door, no hatch, not even a service panel. Probably got redesigned post-fabrication, I said, but I didn't believe it myself. We checked the updated PDFS and the AS-built docs. The room was still listed, and the model still showed it. "What's it even for?" Wei asked. "Dead zone, maybe, storage. But it's there," I muttered. "Let's verify." We traced the length of the wall, tapped with knuckles, checked the spacing. There was definitely something hollow behind the bulkhead. The noise had that soft reverb you get when there's empty air on the other side. That's when it hit me. If the room exists, and it did, how was it built? There were no weld seams. None. Not even at the floor or ceiling joints. And I know Chinese shipyards, thousands of workers. Sometimes things happen. Corners get cut. But this wasn't a shortcut. This was precision steel fabrication, with no way in, unless it had been sealed from the inside. I didn't want to say it out loud. Wei didn't either. He looked at me, a little pale, then back at the bulkhead. "Someone could have been in there," he said, "during the weld." I nodded. If the ventilation wasn't rigged, welding gases would have filled it in minutes. He swallowed. "That would mean, yeah." We didn't talk about it again for a few days, but I kept thinking about it. I even filed a quiet report, just to document the structural anomaly. I didn't say anything about what we suspected. No one wants to delay a vessel over ghost stories. 2 weeks later, we set sail. I rode with the ship from Yantai to Amsterdam and then across the Atlantic to New Orleans. The maiden voyage, everything should have been smooth, but it wasn't. By the time we crossed into the Gulf, people were talking. Crew kept saying they heard things, metal tapping from inside bulkheads, footsteps behind closed compartments, a voice sometimes, always muffled, like someone calling through steel. At first, it was easy to brush off. Ships creak, steel contracts, wind whistles through vents. You get used to weird sounds offshore, but then I started hearing them too. It was always near that sealed section. Always. One night, I think we were somewhere south of Bermuda. I went down to the corridor myself. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe, or something else. It was just after 2 a.m. I remember because the hallway clock was stuck on 2:14, blinking like it had reset mid-power cycle. I stood there for a long time, staring at that smooth, perfect wall, and then I heard it. A sharp knock. 3 taps, right behind the bulkhead. I froze. My mouth went dry. I wanted to move, to tell myself it was nothing, just shift metal, or echo, or whatever. But then came another knock. Not random this time. It tapped a pattern. Tap, 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 Morse code. I knew enough to know that. It spelled H-E-L-P. I swear to God, it spelled help. I backed up down the corridor, almost tripping. I don't know how long I stood there staring. Then I heard breathing. Wet, ragged breathing, right up against the wall like someone exhaling inside a mask. Then nothing. I didn't sleep for the rest of the voyage. I stayed out of that wing entirely. So did most of the crew. That section of the ship became a dead zone. No maintenance, no walkthroughs, no patrols. The chief refused to send people there alone. The rumors got worse. One guy said he felt something grab his shoulder near the bulkhead. Another said he heard someone weeping on the other side, like they'd been there for days. A welder, tough guy from Louisiana, had a full-on breakdown and left at the next port. When we docked in New Orleans, I got off and didn't go back. I handed in my contract and switched to land-based inspection work. Been doing that ever since. Story 9. People always think the scariest part of living way out in the woods is the isolation. It's not. The real horror is when you realize you're not alone, and you absolutely should be. My name's Travis. I live in an old hunting cabin about 30 miles outside of Ely, Minnesota. I moved up here 2 years ago after getting divorced. I just needed space, peace, some quiet to figure my head out. I hunt, fish, trap, live off-grid, more or less. I have a satellite phone, a generator for power, and a couple of dogs that bark at damn near everything. That night, they didn't bark. That's what messed with me the most. It was just past 10 p.m. I'd been up late fixing one of my snowmobiles. Winter hits early up here, and I wanted to be ready. The generator was off, house lit only by a couple lanterns. I just fed the dogs and was getting ready to turn in when I heard it. A knock at the door. Just 3 sharp knocks. Not pounding, not frantic, just polite. At first I figured it was a tree branch or something, but it came again. Same pattern. 3 knocks. I looked at my dogs, both of them, dead silent, ears flat, staring at the door. Not growling, not even moving, just staring like statues. That's when my stomach dropped. They've barked at bears, coyotes, even a moose once, but not this. I stood up slowly. The door's solid oak, no window, but there's a small side window near the front. I grabbed my rifle off the wall, made sure the safety was off, and stepped over to peek through the curtain. Nothing. Just the porch. Dark woods beyond it. My lantern inside didn't throw enough light to see past the steps. No movement, no shape, no sound. But I swear to God I felt someone out there. Then the knocks came again. Same rhythm. 3 knocks. But I was looking out the window. There was no one on the porch. I saw the wood of the door flex slightly with the sound. Whatever was knocking was doing it without showing up. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I just stood there, frozen, staring into the trees. Then a voice. From the other side of the door, maybe 3 feet away. "Can I come in?" Male voice. Calm. Software. Almost friendly. My skin went cold. I didn't reply. I didn't move. I just raised the rifle and backed into the kitchen. He spoke again. Same voice, same tone. "I can see you, Travis." My name. He said my goddamn name. Now I haven't told anyone where I live. No neighbors for miles. You can't find my place unless you're looking hard. Even the mail doesn't come this far. I didn't know what the hell to do. My mind was racing. Maybe someone from town? Maybe someone followed me back from the gas station a few days ago? But why at night? Why out here? And how the hell did he know my name? I backed into the hallway, turned off the lantern in the kitchen. Now only one was burning, near the door. I figured if he was watching me, he needed the light to do it. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Silence. Then something moved across the window. Not walked. Moved. Fast. Like a flicker. Like someone was already pressed up against the wall and slid across it without stepping. My dogs whimpered and backed under the table. That's when the knocking started again. Not on the front door this time, on the back one. 3 knocks, exactly the same. I spun around, ran to the back. No window on that door either, but I had a motion sensor light on the back porch. I flicked the switch. Nothing. No light, no sound, no movement. Then I realized something else. No generator. It had gone silent. I hadn't noticed it at first. Adrenaline, I guess. But everything was quiet. Too quiet. That thing runs all night unless I kill it. I started to feel it in my chest. That deep, slow fear that settles into your bones. Something was off. Wrong in a way I couldn't explain. This wasn't just a stranger in the woods. This was something else. And then all at once, every window in the cabin, every single one lit up. But not from inside, from outside. Bright white light, like someone had turned on massive floodlights all around the house. I dropped to the floor, rifle aimed at the nearest window. But there were no shadows, no silhouettes, just flat, white light pouring in. The kind of light that has no source. And then the voice came again, from right above me, like from the ceiling. I said, "Can I come in?" That's when the power came back. The generator kicked on by itself. The lights inside the house turned on. But the white light outside was gone. Everything went dead silent. I stood up slowly. The dogs were gone. No sign of them. Just gone. Like they'd never been there. I opened the front door. The porch was empty. The trees were still. No footprints in the snow. No sign of anyone. I called for the dogs for nearly an hour. Nothing. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't seen them since. Story 10. People around here don't lock their doors. Never had to. I grew up in southern Appalachia, halfway up a mountain where the fog clings low in the hollows, and your nearest neighbor's a 10-minute drive, if you don't hit a deer on the way. I took over my uncle's place when he passed. It's an old hunting cabin he built back in the 70s. Nothing fancy. 1 floor, wood stove, and a back deck that hangs off into nothing but trees. I'd been living there maybe 4 months when this happened. It was late October, and the nights had started dipping below freezing. That evening, I'd been cutting firewood until dusk. I remember because I split my thumb open on a knot in the oak and had to wrap it in duct tape. I cooked some dinner, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and went out onto the back deck to sit under the stars. No porch light. Just the moon, which was damn near full, bright enough to silver the tops of the pines below. Around 11, I heard something moving down in the woods. Now I've heard bears, coyotes, bobcats. This wasn't like any of that. The steps were slow, heavy, deliberate, like someone walking barefoot across gravel. I turned my head toward the sound, but it stopped the second I moved. I sat real still, listening. Then it started again, closer, still slow. Still that odd crunch like bone on frost-bitten leaves. I leaned forward in my chair, staring out over the railing, trying to catch movement between the trees. That's when I saw it. It was standing just beyond the edge of the clearing, right at the tree line. At first I thought it was a person, tall and narrow. But the longer I looked, the more I realized something was wrong with how it stood. Its legs were too long, the torso too short. The arms hung low, almost to its knees. And the head, God, the head, it tilted to one side like it didn't know how necks were supposed to work. I blinked. It didn't move. I whispered, "Hey!" It heard me. Its head jerked upright, like a dog snapping to attention, and it stepped forward. Not fast, just one step. That was enough. It wasn't walking right. Its knees bent backward. I stood up, heart hammering, hand instinctively reaching for the rifle just inside the door. I kept my eyes on it as I backed up slowly. And then, it crouched. Not like a person crouches. It dropped straight down in one sickening motion, like folding a coat hanger in half. I didn't even open the door. I dove through it and rolled across the floor, grabbed the rifle from the hooks by the coat rack, kicked the door shut behind me, and crawled to the window. It was gone. Nothing moved in the clearing. I could see my breath in the room. I stayed there, crouched under the window, eyes glued to the glass. Barrel pointed out. I don't know how long I waited. At some point I realized I hadn't heard the woods go quiet. You ever notice that? How the crickets and frogs all shut up when something's not right. But they hadn't. They were still chirping. Loud, constant. Almost louder than usual, like they were trying to drown something else out. I started to wonder if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe it was a trick of the moonlight, my brain playing games. I even started laughing a little. Shaky, dry-throated, stupid kind of laugh. And then I heard it, on the roof. Thump. I froze. Another thump. Then a slow dragging sound, like nails or claws scraping across the tin roof. Not fast, not animal fast, just steady, precise. I looked up, trying to see through the ceiling like a damn idiot. I thought about running outside, but realized I didn't know where it was. I couldn't see the roof from any window. I didn't want to be under it. I didn't want to be inside it either. I was stuck. So I did the only thing I could think of. I fired the rifle straight up through the ceiling. The sound was deafening inside the cabin. Dust and insulation rained down. I racked the bolt, chambered another round. Silence followed. I crept to the front door and cracked it open just enough to see the yard. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches. I stepped outside, holding the rifle tight, eyes scanning every inch of shadow. Then I heard the breathing. It was behind me. Not right behind, upper. I turned just in time to see something pale slither down the back of the cabin. Not climb, slither, like it had no bones. It hit the ground without a sound and stood. I remember its face now. God help me, it didn't have one. Just skin pulled tight over a round skull. No eyes, no nose. Just a mouth that went too wide and hung open like it was always mid-scream. And then it ran. Not toward me, away. Back into the trees, on two legs, backwards, knees pumping like a deer. It moved too fast, way too fast, and it never looked back.